Ryan Day, the Ohio State Buckeyes, national champs, favored next year as well, is joining us live. You know, I was thinking about this morning. Years ago, Mike Krzyzewski, when they did the one and done, he didn't like it. And then I asked him about it, and he goes, I didn't like it. And then 3 years in, I realized I was losing to all these one and done guys. So maybe it's time for me not to be stubborn. Your sport, Ryan, has become incredibly transient. I mean, it's just what it is. Was there a moment when it all came down the hill, transfer portal, NIL, was there a moment where you said, I don't know if I like this, we're going to just do high school guys? Or did you buy into it 10 minutes in?
I mean, there's still things going on that I throw my hands up right now. There's just so many changes. I think about, the NIL, the transfer portal, the conference realignment with 18 teams. So now, in the Big Ten, we travel to the West Coast. Then you have the playoff change. Like just those four things. Those are just four things that have all happened. Those are like major, major changes. So you just had to be comfortable being uncomfortable in solving it and getting it, because nobody cares. Like there's all kinds of things that happened, in the last month or so that, after our game we can get into later, but nobody cares about. Like what matters is putting your talent, a talent acquisition on the field and putting them together and putting a team together. So as much though as things have changed, to me, I felt with this team, it was about the kind of timeless principles of hard work and sacrifice and loyalty and resilience that separated us.
So I'm a friend of Chip Kelly, and he's told me about your friendship for years and years. And I said, I predicted before the season, I said, Ohio State's going to lose at Autzen. I've been to too many games there. You can't hear yourself think. I don't think anybody in the country is going to beat this Oregon team at Autzen. You got close. I said, Ohio State's going to beat them. They're going to meet later, and Ohio State's got better personnel, and Ohio State's going to beat them. But one of the things I theorized, I said, Chip Kelly is a real advantage that you're not going to notice until the playoff. He knows how to stagger these games, because college football now feels like pro football. You can lose late in the season. It's not a death knell. It's about staggering. It's about slowly unveiling. Take our audience into the value of Chip Kelly in that playoff that I can't see, guys like me can't see, but inside your building, the additive value that Chip gave you that had a little NFL feel to it.
Well, yeah, I think, like you said, when you're talking about now 16 games in a long season with a playoff format at the end of the year, it starts off with, even this time of year, making decisions on how you want to proceed. Like, for instance, we decided to huddle on offense this year. We had never done that. Certainly Chip hadn't done that a lot, with his background and tempo. But that decision was a huge decision. And that, we wanted to continue to evolve as the season went on. But then, really have our best football for the end of the year. And I think having the NFL experience, I would think a lot of teams would tell you, in the NFL in September, there's sort of the preseason. October, they're finding their identity. And then by the time they get to November and December, like now they're going to play for championships and everything's on the line. And I wouldn't say that that's the way it is in college right now, but it's trending towards that. And having somebody that's been in that position before, certainly with his experience in the NFL, it made a big difference.
So you have two players, and I had said this. I had an NFL general manager tell me a month ago that if Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs were in this class, they'd probably be the second and third guys taken. They're unbelievable players. And you guys have done a really good job, and I think this is really hard, because especially now you're paying players, that you have these superstar players, and yet it felt like such a team. You felt like such a team. Your sideline, your body language. Is it harder when you have, Ohio State's one of four programs, maybe three, that gets those guys? When you have literally NFL players, they're just not eligible yet. You're paying them. You're not paying everybody big money. In the NFL, everybody's doing fine. In college, there's a little gap. Is that hard for you to massage as a coach?
Well, I think it starts with the identification. I mean, there's a lot of NFL players that, aren't at Ohio State. That maybe just aren't the right fit for who we are. And so we try to do, a great job of identifying, the right people that fit us. There's a lot of great players out there, but Ohio State's not for everybody. And, we try to make sure that we bring in the right folks that fit our culture, because now, again, like you said, these guys are making money now. So it's now even more important to bring in the right fit And then what you say to them in the recruiting process, you better follow through with, because they can literally walk out the door tomorrow if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So, it's really forcing everybody to really, I think, follow through with what they talk about on the front end. But then these guys still want to be held accountable, and coaching them hard and giving them life lessons and building trust within the building is very, very important. And I think, our fan base and being in Columbus and what comes with that, our guys understand that there's a big obligation when you come to Ohio State, what comes with it. So, the fact that we were able to overcome some things this year and then prevail in the back end certainly is going to, carry over into the season.
You've got a bunch of guys that are going to be very good. I mean, you're really a factory now. You've become the best. You guys have done a little bit Alabama did. So Saban was a defensive coach, and by the time he left, Alabama was known for wide receivers and quarterbacks. Ohio State, in my lifetime, was running backs, linemen, linebackers, and now it's wide receiver you. And I've said this. I told Urban Meyer this once. I said, when you have receivers as good as Ohio State, you got to feed them. And I said, I think it can hurt your run game and physicality. How do you simultaneously build power football? It's easy for Harbaugh with the Chargers now, by the way, because they don't have superstar receivers. Once you have 4 of them, is it hard for you as a coach? Okay, we want to be explosive, but we want a little 1985 Ohio State too. Is that hard for you?
Oh, I think it's a great conversation, Colin. I think it's a great point, because when you're in the Big Ten, like, you've got to play smash mouth football. But then you also got to be able to go out to the Rose Bowl or down to, the Cotton Bowl and play Texas and Oregon and a track meet, And so that's the combination of things that we're constantly trying to make sure we balance out. And the only way you can do that is if you have unselfish guys. So, like, to have TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins together in the backfield together and let young players see that their unselfishness and willing to sacrifice being the guy or a number of carries so that they could play really, really fast and really physical down the stretch made a big difference, I think.
Yeah.
And the only way that happens is if guys are unselfish. And to your point, if you have selfish guys who just want the ball and don't understand how important it is to establish the run, it's not going to work. And vice versa. If you have, running backs who want a certain number of carries when the ball needs to get thrown out to some of our receivers, it isn't going to work. So buying into the team is critical.
There's been a couple moments in my life when I had my first child that I literally was floating. Like, I didn't feel like, I'm like, what's happening to me? I got salty discharge. I'm crying, And so you have had that too. We've all had personal moments. But I want you to pivot now to a professional moment, because there is a difference between work and home, even though we love both. Take me back to the moment you knew you were going to be national champion. Who was the first person you thought of?
Well, for me, it was my father. And I didn't really make this public before, but since you asked me, I'm going to answer the question. I lost my father on January 20th when I was 9 years old. And I saw when the schedule came out that the national championship game was on the same day that I lost my father. And so, I just knew that he was with me that day. And that was the first guy that I thought of.
Oh, that's a great story. We've said this before. You're at a good program when you get heat for losing occasionally to Jim Harbaugh in Georgia. Right now, it's the best program. In my opinion, it's the best program in college football, NIL, transfer portal, coaching, destination. It's Ohio State. Do you ever just get to go for a walk in the park in Columbus, put a baseball cap on and not get noticed? Or do you sometimes feel like, man, this is a lot. This is a lot, coaching the Buckeyes in Ohio State. How's that land for you?
It is a lot. It is, but that's what you signed up for. And, I remember when the first press conference, I was there with Urban, and, a lot of people just kind of asked, how do you follow up Coach Meyer, a legend? And what if you don't do this? And what if you don't do that? And I just kind of had the mindset of what if we do? Well, what an opportunity to be at a place where there's just such great tradition. And, my wife that night, we're on the bed together. I had 3 young kids, knowing that we were probably the first, family to go through this with young kids, going through elementary school and now into junior high and high school. And she kind of cried and she said, this is the last time our family will be normal. And I didn't even understand at the time, but she did. And she was right. But it's part of the job. It's part of the obligation. And I think after this game, so many people have come up to me across the country when I've traveled in different places. And the first thing they say is, thank you. Just thank you for what you did this year. and they tell the stories of where they've been across the country or who they were when they watched the run that we went on. And it just makes you realize that Ohio State football is bigger than any one of us and the obligation that we have. And it's just it's an honor to be the head coach at Ohio State.
I love I appreciate you giving these stories to us because you don't have to, and you're opening up, and it means a lot. Finally, a big thank you from me for playing Texas. So Ohio State, a lot of programs won't do this, and it drives me nuts. You guys, I remember when Pete Carroll, you scheduled the Trojans in L.A., Ohio State played them at home, and a lot of coaches won't do this. And, you have just made a point. I don't mind the Youngstown State. I don't mind that, in-state Ohio. But when you, it's one thing to make a commitment. 3 weeks before that game, are you going to be thinking, we could have played Texas State at Arlington? It would have been, I mean, that's a hell of an opening game. You're going to lose some sleep when that thing's 2 weeks out?
Well, I think it's 173 days from today. So, yeah, to say I'm going to lose sleep, yeah, you're darn right I'm going to lose some sleep. I think a couple of things. I think, one, it allows you, an opportunity to figure out where you're at early in the season. But I think it's important moving forward with the playoff system that, like in the Big Ten and in the SEC, and as we start to work through this, that we do get automatic qualifiers and a certain amount of automatic qualifiers. If we don't, then you're never going to see these games scheduled, to your point.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think that's critical. If we want these games, which I think we should have these games,
yes,
then we need to make sure that happens, because I think it's really, really good for college football.
Oh, I mean, I think the loss at Oregon, my takeaway is that was going to easily be the harshest environment you would play in. I didn't care what you did the rest of the year. I don't care if you're – that was – no, I covered Oregon. That is as loud as any football stadium I've ever been in, NFL or college. So in a way – you look at it at the time, and it stinks flying back to Columbus, but it paid dividends later. Your guys saw what real duress is like. In Ohio State, you don't face a lot of that. It's just. I feel like the football gods, you should have won this year, and I love the way you won. And I want to thank you for coming on, giving us a little insight into your life, and impossible not to root for, Ryan. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it, Colin. Much respect, man.
All right, great football coach. And I really believe this is, I think if you count transfer portal, NIL, coaching, home environment, budget, focus, I think Ohio State, this moment, is the best football program in America. Now, it's always like, Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, it ebbs and flows. It never lasts forever. But that is a tough job. You do not escape. I mean, when you coach Ohio State, you can take your family on a trip to Florence, Italy, and there'll be Buckeyes over there too. Appreciate that. So